In 2008, Shorthouse joined Colony Betting here in Berlin. Our first project was an exhibition at Artillery. 5 artists from Los Angeles and 5 artists working in Berlin were curated into this group show, which focused on the notion of exchange and transience. This is the installation view, the first room, and the second room. The work I presented in the show is titled Every 4 Minutes. It is a large inkjet print, approximately 90 by 120 centimeters. I started with a snapshot that I took during one of my commutes to work. For those of you who know Berlin, it's on the M4 tram. I lived in Europe last year, Paris for 3 months and Berlin for 9 months. And I am completely inspired by the mobility of artists in Europe, especially Berlin. I reflected a lot on my own personal experiences being an expat for this project. This is a detail of the print. I used formal drawing elements to emphasize the repetition present in Berlin's architecture, as well as the repetition in one's daily routines. The text is inspired by the commotion in the environment, as well as the subjective brain chatter that a commuter may have. And this should look familiar. This is my work produced for Off Fence. The title is Trans Poster. Again, I gathered images from the internet. These images depict the border, the US-Mexico border, in 3 ways. First being the human-made physical structures, walls, fences. The second is the natural landscape, the Rio Grande, and also the coastline. And the third is the more conceptual aspect, policy making and the laws that define a border. The text, "May I help you," is translated back and forth in English and Spanish using a computer translator. The literal meaning of the question is inverted from "May I help you" to "May you help me." And the loop completes itself by translating back to "May I help you." This project is really about how the border is approached and how the border affects people. People being groups, workers, builders, patrol and police, as well as individuals, immigrants, public servants, travelers, tourists, etc. There is a subtle power shift in the way the phrase "May I help you" changes. The visual presentation of the text is meant to be confusing and even slightly intimidating. "May I help you" can have a multitude of meanings depending on the inflection of the speaker. It could sound friendly, hospitable, or authoritative and intimidating. The last work that I will show you is a video from 2005 titled "Can't Sleep." It too depicts a subtle illustration of power dynamics between 2 parties. The work presents a dialogue in a narrative structure. Very short, I could play it again. There's a very subtle passive aggression in the dialogue. that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions? I'd like to open up dialogue among Chris and Regina as well. Perhaps about my work, offense. Yeah?
So I'm curious, what are some of your upcoming projects?
There is an event in Joshua Tree, California in June. It's titled Shangri-La, and again, it is on this premise of utopia, which I think is very interesting. There's a lot of artists. This is an artist-run project as well, Shangri-La, but people are reflecting on these notions of utopia. Again, I'm collaborating the work with Ian Henderson. This work in progress is about the repetition of trying to do something to perfection. We hired a couple actors and I'm going to photograph them doing an action of a heavily loaded sign of love and romance. Could be some sort of embrace or perhaps a genuflection, like a proposal. And I'm going to document this over and over with slide film and project it using a slide projector and having it auto repeat so that hopefully the viewer can see the subtle differences every time this gesture is repeated, and again looking at this irony of this perfect moment, this Shangri-La, this paradise. Well, thank you very much for coming.
I was thinking, you were also saying that this influence of 60s conceptual art in America, and not only the way it affects creative production as far as artists, but creative production as far as advertising today, and also kind of brings the loop back to your link with quoting advertising or using advertising sources, and at the same time quoting this generation of Boucher or Fruits from the 60s and 70s. Do you feel there's a conflict between, you use it in a critical way, the way artists kind of using the 60s conceptual art, at the same time it's something that's more and more in advertising and in other visual discourses that we have. How does that affect, how do you work with that, and where do you see it going?
Well, that's one reason why I started using imagery found through websites. I feel that there's different aspects of my practice that are definitely inform each other, but not necessarily so directly. And I think that I'm somewhere in my thought processes where I can focus more and articulate those connections better. I do think that there is something to be said for collective action in a visual art practice, because the work does not stay in the gallery. So, I will try to experiment as much as I can.